going to go ahead and dig in. Here is the flow of our time together today. As I mentioned in my email, I'm going to be incorporating a bit of orientation items into our session today. So that's really what you see in items 2 and 3 here. I'll overview LDC's coach certification process so that you have a nice sense of the kind of work required to become a certified coach, how that positioning and that work connects with the work you're doing at your school site, as well as just what kind of work is required in order to get those badges, in order to demonstrate your evidence that you understand how to develop very standards-driven and aligned curriculum for students. The third item here, again, another orientation item, we'll really get into thinking about how teachers and overall schools use LDC's planning tools in order not just to create a few good assignments, but to align instruction to standards, to assessments across an entire system. System meaning either the school itself or actually the entire district. And we'll think on both of those planes as we spend our time together. And then finally, we will get into what will definitely be a refresher for you all. We'll do that activity where we look at a sample task and some sample student work using a sample that should be new to everyone here in order to really develop our own competencies around being able to identify evidence of standards in a task and in student work so that we can do that for colleagues and other people that we work with. So again, old hat for all of us on this call. We're going to be meeting in these virtual live sessions once weekly. I mentioned that most of our sessions will happen at 9 o'clock a.m. each Tuesday. We have a couple of breaks. We have a break over the July 4th weekend and then another one during the first 2 weeks in August when the kids come back. So I know you'll be inundated with a lot of work during that time. So we're taking a breather at that time. Again, our sessions will be at 9 a.m. Pacific, except for those final 2 sessions on August 21st and August 28th. Those will be at 3 o'clock after the school day, because I know you'll be with the kids all day. So we'll meet virtually during those sessions together, again, using Zoom. We'll use a lot of different active facilitation strategies during our time together. I'll use the Zoom chat a lot. We'll use breakout rooms sometimes. We'll have plenty of verbal discussions as well. Offline, outside of those live sessions, is when I will ask you to do the homework or the offline work. A lot of that, once we really get into the work, will involve you working on your task. That might mean designing a new task from scratch, or you may be revising one that you started last year or that you even tried teaching last year, and that you have ideas about how to revise. Very quickly, before I get into coach certification, I'll give a quick overview of the flow of our time together. So all of our agendas and the overall sequence for our work is actually in LDC Learn now. So you guys, again, you're ahead of the curve here. Your colleagues will be given access to the new Learn tab in July. And you've got a little bit sooner so that we can do our work together. The new Learn tab repackages and really streamlines the course content in a great way. I'm really glad for and excited for that streamlining. I think it'll make it so much easier for people to access. You can see here also that I have 2 different kind of menus I can toggle between. The one I'm viewing right now is the LDC Learner menu. This is where all the course content is when you are learning how to do this design work. Everything you used with your coach during the past school year is here. Again, newly packaged. I'll get into what that looks like, how it looks a little bit different later. And of course, the other menu that I can toggle to is for LDC leaders, and that's you guys. You are your teacher leaders at your schools. Many of you are in coaching roles, or this work might hopefully encourage you to take on more of that instructional leadership work in your setting. The content that is available to you as a leader is underneath of this leader tab. And what we'll be using during our time together is this Quality Tasks virtual cohort course. I'm going to click into it just to give you a sense of the overall flow for our time together. Here we go. Here are our 8 sessions. As I mentioned, I incorporated some of the orientation materials just into our first session together, week 1. And we're having kind of the big picture discussion about why today. What's the purpose behind this work? How does it drive toward curriculum alignment? How does it improve teacher and student skills? Then we'll get in next week to thinking about overall alignment within assignments and then beyond assignments at the level of the curriculum. In week 3, we'll really dig into actually starting to design your task, selecting the focus standards, cognitive demand, really doing all of that work. And we'll continue in weeks 4, 5, and 6 to really focus in on your task design work. In weeks 5 and 6, I'm really excited for these. We will practice actually providing feedback to one another so that you can start to develop your own skill set in providing high quality feedback to colleagues and take that work back with you to your campus. We'll also do some workshopping. You'll get more used to that. We'll do a lot of it. In certain sessions, I'll ask folks to sign up to have their tasks workshopped, and that will give colleagues an opportunity to get an eye on your work, give some feedback. It can always be really helpful to just get other people's brains on your work. You can often see things you might not be seeing. I'll also be conducting one-on-one workshops with you so that you get a really close eye on your work, as well as differentiated feedback on how to ensure that your task is good to go. We'll close with a lot of reflection and shifting into really thinking about how we are leaders in this work, how you can be using this work to support other people on your campus in doing deep instructional design work, ensuring really standards-driven assignments for their students, and that type of thing. And finally, I will ask you all, as kind of the exit slip for the whole course, to submit your task to LDC's National Peer Review event, and that's going to be on September 4th. Well, that'll be our deadline for you to submit your task. And again, peer review is a really neat process. That means when you submit your task, it'll go to 2 other people who have done a couple of things to make sure that they are quality peer reviewers. They've gone to LDC's peer review trainings, and those trainings allow them to learn our peer review rubric as well as apply it to example modules. Many of you have done the same thing. Then after that training, these peer reviewers have actually calibrated themselves to the LDC peer review rubric. That means they applied that rubric to many sample modules and just scored again and again and again in order to get to the point where their scores were aligned with the master scores. So again, getting closer and closer to just aligning with the scores that Stanford actually, the folks that designed the rubric, applied to those practice modules. So those 2 reviewers who are calibrated against the rubric will take a look at your work, and they'll score it separately. And then they actually have a joint meeting where they come together to arrive at a consensus or a shared score for your task. So that's the process that your task will undergo after we work on it together during our 8 weeks together. Ideally, everybody will move toward getting a good to go or an exemplary badge for their work, for their task. And that'll be your ultimate evidence that you really know how to design a discipline-specific, standards-driven, and rigorous assignment for your students. So let's get into thinking about this role of coach that I've been describing a little bit. Now, we know coaches are really valuable catalysts within schools and within districts. And the coach certification process is our way of making sure coaches have evidence of their ability to be catalysts for really good instruction to happen at their schools or across their districts. We see coaches really as the bridge between the work of improving instruction and designing really high quality lessons for the kids in one classroom to lifting the entire school by achieving really high quality lessons for students across all classrooms. The coach is really the driver of that work, of moving it beyond a couple of bright spot classrooms and across all classrooms. So one way to really accomplish that bridging, accomplish that lift, is to make sure this work is happening with student work at its center. And we've all talked about that. We're really pushing to make the student work the anchor and the reason for why we make the decisions we do about instruction. So we know that, of course, talking about coaches as bridging or as catalyzing, coaches really are connectors in their systems. So I've got this funny diagram in front of you, and what it implies or shows you is the impact that one coach has on many other teachers, and not just on the teachers, but on ensuring that those teachers are designing and teaching high quality assignments to their students. So this blue dot in the middle indicates one coach, a coach out in Pennsylvania, who then has, you can see, a really big ripple effect to all the other dots. The other dots are other teachers who create modules themselves. The blue modules indicate that those teachers were motivated or catalyzed to submit their work to LDC's national peer review so that they could have it vetted. And ideally, so that they can get it to meet those good to go or exemplary criteria on our rubric. Now you can see the dots in orange or in kind of a peach color. Those are the ones where the teacher actually did submit and had their work vetted as good to go or exemplary, meaning that this coach in the middle, who is certified, who did all that work to make sure she was fully able to design her own high quality instruction and coach others to do the same, she's actually really doing that. She is motivating folks to try out modules, to submit them, and ultimately she's getting them to the point where they're able to design their own very standards-driven tasks that meet the criteria for good to go or exemplary work on the teacher's part. So our theory of action, you can see here, and based on what I've been describing, it's all based on this backward design within a system, knowing that coaches play really pivotal roles in supporting the actions and growth of others in their building or across their network of schools if you're outside of one school site. So we know, the work's not just about curriculum, it's really about your system and about changing behaviors and mindsets across the people that you're working with, ensuring that folks are getting more invested in designing instruction, in collaborating, in providing feedback to one another and to the students as they formatively assess their skill development along the way toward a writing product. So the work, of course, is underpinned by the LDC teacher competencies. So I'm actually going to put those in the chat, and what I would like for you to do is open those up on your screen. These are a really good one to bookmark for yourself. I come back to them a lot. There they are in the chat. So if you click on that, it'll open up in a new tab on your computer. I'll open them up on mine too. Oh, sorry, I have an internet lag on my end, I think. There we go. So this work is underpinned by these competencies, and these competencies are all, of course, aligned with the Danielson framework and with the teaching and learning framework. So again, I want to, it's not about LDC, it's as much as it is about just good instructional practices. And we know that we really need to make sure we have a skill set in place for ourselves. We have developed these skills in order to design and also help other people design good instruction for their students. Super quickly, again, this will be a refresher. We've got these 4 main competencies, 1, 2, 3, 4. One we've worked on a lot. This is the do you know it when you see it competency. Are you able to look at any prompt that comes your way, whether it's in a textbook or maybe a colleague created it, and actually just identify evidence of some standards in that prompt and really know the prompt is asking kids to read and then write with a clear purpose. Competency 2 is really where we will spend the bulk of our focus for this quality tasks 8-week course, because this is the one all about actually constructing or creating your own prompt. So we'll do all this work, selecting your focus standards, selecting an appropriate cognitive demand for the purpose of your assignment, identifying those texts. Oh, hello, dog. Content central to the discipline, all this good stuff. This will really be the focus for us. For that skills and instruction 8-week course I mentioned, if you're able to take that one next, we'll really dig into competency 3, all around designing the instructional plan for an assignment. So this is the whole kind of kit and caboodle with backward design. After you create your assignment, this is the huge one. Can you backward design the skills, identify all the skills the kids need to meet the demands of the assignment and really practice those focus standards or the skills in them? And then can you actually select or design your instruction to teach each of those skills and assess if the kids are getting them before you move them on to the next one. Competency 4 is kind of woven throughout. We'll even do some of this today. This one's really, again, focused on making the kids' work the center of your work so that you're always responding to what the kids are showing you. Can you really assess the kids' outcomes, analyze them, and use their outcomes to make decisions about your next steps for instruction, not just in writing, but in everything that you're doing. So these competencies, they're underpinning the work, and the focus of the work is really to understand like what overall standards alignment means, regardless of discipline, and support ourselves and then our colleagues in creating that instruction that's going to help kids meet rigor and demands in our standards. So go ahead and make sure, you bookmark that one. It's always a good one to have on your computer. Okay, a lot of words on this page. You're welcome to read them as I chat. I'll do a really quick overview. Again, about LDC coach certification. So the work of the coach, it's an evidence-based process I mentioned that you can get badges for, and those badges really are your evidence that you know how to do this instructional design work. The certification process, just wanted to give a quick overview. It's all validated through the work that LDC has done with, it's called SCALE, the Stanford Center for Assessment, Learning, and Equity. They're the ones they're big SBAC advisors, big assessment people, and they've worked with LDC to create our peer review rubric and really give us a set of criteria to look at teacher work. They also have designed all the student work rubrics too. And then we also have partnership with the National Board, which I'll talk about more as we move along here. Those two partnerships have really helped us validate and norm the rubric that we use to look at teacher work. And also have helped us really make sure that this work transcends just the LDC planning tools and aligns with all these other systems of work. So because, good work counts across multiple areas. So if you're going to be supporting teachers in using the courses, those LDC courses I mentioned, to do the work, or again, many of you are continuing on in these teacher leader capacities, or you want to just grow your own skill set in leading others in instructional planning, I really want you to be thinking, and we'll be really toggling between these two mindsets throughout our sessions together. One, of course, the mindset you'll really be in to revise or create your new task is the learner mindset. So I'm going to constantly come back to this as we move along in our work. I'll always pop in the chat if I really want you thinking as a leader or thinking as a learner. When you're in the learner space, wearing the learner hat, I want you to be thinking, what new ideas or content am I learning right now? And how can I integrate those new ideas or content into my schema or my existing knowledge or my existing work? How can you just relate it back to your own work? As a leader, sometimes I'm going to poke you to think about how you can apply whatever it is we're learning or doing to your work. And really actually what exactly you might do, what specifically you might do in your own practices, in your own job at school or in your own work as the leader in your planning meeting as a result of that learning. So sometimes we'll shift between wearing the leader, wearing the learner hats, and sometimes I will nudge you to think really specifically about how you would take a specific activity or a specific piece of content back to your teacher group or back to your administrator. All right, so let me just chat to you a couple more things and then we'll move on here about the coach badges I mentioned. These are those ones that I know you've seen them before. This is basically the sequencing of the badging work. You will start out here where we are together and become a task author. You'll work on your task with me and with your colleagues here, and with the goal of submitting it to national peer review and getting that good to go or that exemplary badge, because that's your evidence that you created a standards-driven assignment that is discipline-specific and that can be replicated in other classrooms. Next step is to get that badge for your ladder so that you can create the entire instructional plan and also have evidence via the badges to show other people that says, yep, I know how to do this. And I know how to create a really tightly aligned assignment and instructional plan for students. Then some of you guys have also actually already earned these certificates, the Certified Task Reviewer and Certified Ladder Reviewer. These are for becoming aligned with not becoming aligned, but actually going to a peer review training, which many of you have already done. That's the training where you, I'm muting here in some Who might that be? Okay. That's where you'd head to that peer review trainings. Somebody mind muting? I think I missed one person. Cool. Okay. And practice just applying the LDC peer review rubric to other sample modules And then actually start aligning yourself to the rubric by what I mentioned. Actually just practicing, continuing to score other sample modules, and getting yourself aligned with the master scores for each of those modules. When you do that and kind of get enough points for the work, it's just an automated system in Core Tools that you do yourself. You align with the rubric, same as maybe if you've done a student work alignment process with different people at your schools. I know some people do that. Same thing, you're just really pushing, you practice and practice until you make sure you're aligned with the master scores, or with, if you're at a school site, like all the other people who are using the same rubric you are. So when you do that work, you can either become certified or even expert if you calibrate really closely with that rubric. And then you get these badges. So all the coaches that you guys have worked with who are virtually facilitating with your schools have earned these badges. Most of them are actually in the expert rung here. So they're very tightly aligned with the criteria in our rubric, knowing, okay, what is good to go, so that they can give you feedback and get you guys there. And then finally, the last two little badges here are the actual coach badges. So to become a certified LDC coach, you get all these badges I mentioned. You get your task and your ladder badge. You become either certified or expert as a reviewer, really knowing how to use that rubric to review other people's work. And then you can, once you get those badges, you're certified. Woohoo! In order to become an expert LDC coach, which many of the coaches working with you have earned, that means that you coach at least 5 other people to create modules and then submit them and get their good to go badges. So that's a big one, and a really neat one. I think you guys are really nicely positioned to do that kind of work. Those of you that are teacher leaders at school sites, if you're working next year with the LDC virtual coach to support your teachers, I think you could really get 5 people at your school to create a task at least, and then submit it and try to get a good to go badge for it. So I think that sounds like a lot of work when you look at it on screen, but definitely thinking over the course of the whole school year, I think you guys are, a lot of you are really nicely positioned to do this work. Practice your own leadership skill sets, and then also just make sure colleagues are producing really good tasks too for their kids. So any questions about the badges? The overall flow? I think so. Does anyone have a badge yet? Trying to see if anybody. I feel like Susanna and I think you and Maria may have actually already submitted a national peer review. I'm not sure you guys got the badge, but I thought it was really brave that you submitted. Okay, so that's the gist here.
I do have a badge already.
Oh, you do, Susanna? Okay,
yes.
Which badge is it?
I don't know off the top of my head because I'm driving, but I do know I have one badge.
Awesome. Well, kudos, my friend. Susanna has a badge, everyone. We'll figure out which one it is later.
I'll be home in like 5 minutes, and then I'll look it up.
Excellent. So these are the overall components that I talked to you about. We'll continue moving through. We're going to use the Learn content a lot during our time together. And because you're in this kind of coach certification course and journey, you have access to what I just showed you in let me scoot out of this real quickly. In the Learn tab, you have your learner section, and now you have your leader section that will have our quality tasks, virtual cohort kind of agendas in it. And of course, you have your learner section too that we'll be using throughout our time together this summer. We talked a little bit about the badging, so you understand how that system works. That's our evidence-based coach certification system. We also have a lot of different data reports that we'll use in some different ways throughout our time together. I've talked to you about those, many of you, at our teacher leader meetings. One rub there is that because of UTLA restrictions, not able to share those reports with you directly, like put them into your Core Tools accounts, unless you have an administrator credential, because the union's wary of providing data to people in ways that they might use to evaluate colleagues. But I'll still be showing you different data reports, because the big goal, especially next year, is to really hold all administrators accountable for using data to progress monitor and know kind of what teachers are doing and how they can support them in their planning work. And we'll have plenty of peer review opportunities for you and colleagues to take advantage of. We'll have the two days in the fall on two Saturdays that will be paid days for people to come and actually get a good sense of the peer review rubric and then actually spend half of the day just applying it to their own work. So working on their task or their ladder. Then in the spring, we'll have 2 true peer review workshops that people can attend where they practice with all those sample or practice modules. And then they can move on to try to calibrate to the rubric if they'd like, so that they can be really sure they know how to get to a good to go assignment and an instructional ladder for themselves. So that's about all she wrote. What I would like to hear from you, we can have a verbal discussion right now, no need to post in the chat, is just how do you see this work that I've mentioned, this coach certification, as well as just the overall design work I've mentioned? How does it relate to the work you want to be doing in your school? So I'll put that in the chat. How does this coach certification work relate to the work you want to be doing in your school? If you're more comfortable typing, go for it. Or you can just share out.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'll go.
Hey, Tonette.
Hi. From a selfish point of view, this will help me because right now I'm in the admin program.
Ah, okay.
So a lot of the things that we're doing with LDC does correlate with the admin program. Mm-hmm. I've been able to use a lot of the things to help with like leadership roles and writing papers and just discussions. So that's a selfish point of view.
I don't even see that as selfish. It connects back to what I was saying earlier. Kind of, if we all want to be ensuring that leaders in our district really understand instruction and understand how to base instruction in standards and student learning objectives, like we should all know that our administrators have this level of understanding about backward design and about curriculum alignment. So it's for the good of the people, Tonette.
From a personal point of view, I took on the role because I do want to know more about, as a teacher, even when you're giving your students the prompts, sometimes you kind of know, like, I'm not sure this is what I'm really asking the kids, but you get stuck in your head and you kind of get stuck in the process that is kind of hard to take a step back and just start over with the prompt. So this school year, this is our first year using this. It did help me like take a step back and say, okay, am I truly asking the kids what I think I'm asking them? Because it's in your head and it sounds good. And then when you get their papers back, you're like, but that's not what I asked them. But then when you look at the prompt, you're like, oh, yes, it is.
Oh, that is what I asked them.
And they gave me what I asked for, but it wasn't what I wanted. Mm-hmm. So using LDC, I mean, I'm still very new to it. I still get confused, but it has helped me to stop and reflect and see, am I asking the kids to do something that really relates to the standards, or am I asking them to do something because I think it will be like either an easy prompt or a prompt that, oh, okay, they can do this.
Ooh, nicely put. And I think the connection there with being a leader in your school is really around helping other people do exactly what you mentioned, which is actually ensure that they're giving kids a really clear and intentional purpose for reading and writing that actually aligns with their own purpose as the teacher in the room. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Jill has another nice point too. If you're bringing new teachers on to this planning work next year, this is a really nice way to make sure you're a couple pieces ahead of them. And I think that's my goal for you too, Jill, and all of you guys is that you'll really know the content, of course, and really know how to use all of this content in the Learn tab too to support those people in new learning next year. I think quite a few will have new people joining.
Yeah. And I would agree also with Tonette, as far as, and you, Megan, as far as administrators knowing what this is all about and having a good solid understanding of what this instruction looks like, what goes into building these tasks. I just finished up my admin program, and this past year was my first year out of the classroom as a coordinator and also as the LDC lead. And I taught 7th and 8th grade English the years before. So I had my desires for what I wanted writing to look like, and some of the weak areas that I had seen already, and then stepping out and trying to support the teachers in that sense, and knowing the work that goes into planning the lesson, the work that goes into building the skills, writing the prompt, what the reading needs to be, what it actually looks like when you're trying to engage with the students. As an administrator, as a leader going forward, knowing what that is and having that in my own tool belt, I think is a very valuable thing. And continuing next year, we have one new teacher that, well, not new to our school, but new to LDC sort of, that we're going to be bringing in. And we just hired another new teacher who isn't familiar with LDC altogether. And so me having a better, stronger understanding will also, of course, be very useful in continuing to help the teachers kind of buy in and really do the best they can. And hopefully this year submit some of their tasks.
Yeah, thanks. And you remind me too about the power of having a common structure for planning and common expectations for high quality planning and assignments. When you bring in new people to your work environment, your school, you're just bringing them in with those expectations. And then you have a set of structures that they can just use to make sure that their assignments are doing all these things that we've been talking about for students, which is very exciting when you think about it. We've all, you bring new people in, and it's kind of, if you don't have a common set of expectations and planning tools, it's kind of like, well, let's see what this new person has. But when you can bring them in and say, oh, hey, let's all align across our classrooms around our standards-based instruction. Hey, here's how we're doing it. Try out these tools, and we'll all make sure we're doing the same kind of good work for kids. Gosh, it's just a lot less anxiety riddled that way. Yeah, thanks for sharing. All right, let's scoot along here. As I mentioned, you can see on your screen, we'll do this work in our virtual sessions together. At the end in September, I'll have you guys submit to national peer review so you can work toward that first badge for your task authorship. And then you'll get feedback and support from me as well as from the other folks in our course together. We'll do one-on-one task workshopping, and then we'll do some group workshopping together in our sessions. So we'll do that work, like I mentioned, in the Learn tab. Super quick review, of course. This is not new for you, but in that Learner section of your Learn tab, that's where all of the PD content that the coach had been using with you this past year is. However, I want to mention that the course content has been kind of repackaged, as it were, in order to be shorter and more streamlined. So much of it is the same content, but much more accessible. And again, just more streamlined. I think it'll be a lot more manageable for people. What I want to show you here is again, I've got a little more in my tab than you'll have, but you'll have these instructional cycles. And the kind of approach is a little bit different than last year. Last year, you had to choose if you wanted to adapt an existing module or actually just design from scratch. And now the actual entry point is much more focused on those competencies. First, thinking about the task itself. So this is the instructional cycle that we will focus on for our quality tasks session together, or course together rather, because we're focused on the task right now. As we move into skills and instruction, these are competency 3 really, right here, focused on designing the skills list and designing those mini tasks or those daily lessons. That's when you would focus in on instructional cycle 2 for skills lists and instructional cycle 3 for the mini tasks. So it's just kind of, I'm excited about that. I think that's the right approach. as think about with your planning team next year, and you'll work with your virtual LDC coach to think about what's the right competency to start the year off with. Are you guys should you still be focused on the task, or is your group actually ready to really dig into the skills list? Because maybe you're entering into year 3 even, and you can actually just start the year with the starting an instructional cycle or a lesson study cycle focused on the skills list. So again, we'll spend our time during this course in the standards-driven tasks instructional cycle. We're going to spend our time in the designing a task section, because that's really what we'll be doing together. Of course, there's a whole nother section with content that really helps people find an existing task in the Core Tools library and then adapt it for their own use. Together, we'll dig into the design section. I'll give you a quick look again. Let me just poke into session 2 here. This is the session that asks people to select the focus standards. Pretty similar layout. You've seen it. You've got what I have liked. I think this is nice focus on the top. It just gives you the competency focus for the section. So again, you can just align together around what skills you're targeting for that session. Again, competency 2A and 2B, picking the focus standards, and then the LDC task template. That's the one where you have to decide, am I doing comparison? Am I doing analysis? What's my cognitive demand for the work? There's always this status bar in the upper right. You can always, I'll be honest, it clutters the screen for me, so I always put it up like that. I just click the little arrow. But it gives you a sense of how many exercises and action items you've completed. Together, we'll complete some of them, not all of them. But for those of you that like to just have your own running record, that's up there for you. And then the usual, you'll have the content on the left, and we will actually focus in a little bit together on the right-hand column, because this is where a lot of the coaching tips come in. Different tips on how you can use active facilitation strategies. Let me scroll down a little bit, see if there's another one at the bottom. These ones are great. Some responsive coaching tips, how you can be helping participants really engage with the content effectively, how you can be responding to some of their needs for the specific session. Different core tools tips. So that's more content driven. Like, hey, here's how you can help people access specific things, or here's how you can get, or here's, sometimes it'll be different content, like links to different resources that might help deepen learning for that section. And then finally, at the bottom of each session, there is a coaching for impact tip. We'll look at this a little as we move along in our time together. This coaching for impact section is also something that you'll talk about with your virtual LDC coach during the upcoming school year. So I want you guys to start getting a sense of the right-hand column information, because this is something that your coach will check in with you on when you guys have your pre-PLC or pre-LDC meeting calls. The coaching for impact section in particular gives guidance on what kind of data you guys should be seeing in those LDC analytics reports. So when you have the meetings with your LDC coach, she or he can share the screen just so you guys can look at the data together and see, okay, if this was the session where people were supposed to pick their focus standards, we should start seeing a lot of, I'll pull up a report for you, but we should be seeing a lot of those blue dots that indicate people made edits to their modules. So that kind of thing. Again, just to really enable data-based progress monitoring. So you're not going on a hunch, but you're actually checking the data to see, hey, which teachers actually did select their focus standards, which are kind of spinning their wheels or having trouble. And then on the bottom of each section, or each session rather, there's a reflection and discussion section where people can submit their reflections and the coach will see that. That can be a nice way to start off the next meeting by going back and reviewing some people's reflections. Good way to start up a conversation too. At the end, one last item I want to mention is now there's a for next time section. Again, I think super helpful, just gives people a better sense of what they might need to have prepared for next time, as well as where they're going for next time. So that is the overall structure of the learn content that we'll use together. And again, let me toggle back. I'm actually going to have 2 tabs open for my purposes today. You might want to do the same. I sometimes like that. You don't need to, but if it helps you start getting a sense of that learner content and that leader content, go for it. So in one tab, I've got the learner content. Let me get back out to it. So on the top of my screen here, I just clicked LDC Learner. In the other, I'm going to have the LDC Leader content open. I'm actually going to click into our Quality Tasks virtual cohort section, just so I can have it open there. We're going to start to dig in. And again, we'll go till 10:15 today, just because I covered some of this orientation materials. All of our other sessions will go 9 to 10 o'clock. So let me get back. I'll review a little bit about curriculum alignment. We'll do a quick activity with that student work analysis, and then we'll close up. So again, I've been talking about curriculum alignment. We know good curriculum in the hands of skilled teachers engages the kids and results in better student outcomes. So when we talk a lot about this LDC work, we're talking about lift at the level of the system. So that means the school and also the district. So all classrooms and all zip codes, right? Can we guarantee that all kids are being given these kinds of assignments, regardless of where they're going to school? Our way of doing this, kind of our approach to getting at equity of access to good instruction, is to use this backward design process. And that process fuels a lot of the work schools are already trying to do in order to increase teacher skill and student skill. And our hope is that we can use all these tools that we have in our tool belts here to work collaboratively and really build teacher and coach skills in order to get to those student outcomes. So let's get to those student outcomes. What I would like for you to do, let me get to the right slide here, is I've got some instructions for you on my slide here. I'll model them first and then I'll have you go there. Again, you guys are pros in this, so I think it'll go fairly smoothly. But I'm going to have you go to the Learn tab again and into that Learner section. There's actually a nice little standalone course called Analyze Standards. So we're actually just going to head there. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm in my Learner section in the LDC Learn tab. And here's my Analyze Standards little course block. Click into that. And then I'm going to click Analyzing Standards in Student Work. So go ahead and navigate there yourself. Again, you can click Escape on your screen if you want to make my shared screen a little smaller. And just go ahead and make sure you get there. Post in the chat, or you can talk verbally if you're having any troubles finding this. Everyone good? Yeah, nods. Okay, cool. All right. Let me get to where I need to be. So what I'd like you to do is scroll down to the action item. Again, this should look pretty familiar. What's great about it is there's updated samples in this activity. For the purposes of time, and again, just for the sake of example, I'm just going to have us use the same one today. And it'll be a new one. It should be for everyone. So again, the goal is, how quick are you at competency one? How quickly can you look at a task and find evidence of the standards in the task? Picture it's next school year, you've got 6 other people in your planning meeting, they're creating tasks. Can you just go around the room and identify whether or not their tasks are actually asking the kids to do the work of their focus standards? For today, I'd like you to click on under social studies examples. I'm just going to go middle of the road. Many of us here are not social studies teachers, but a couple are. So it'll be a good exercise for everybody. And then let me preview the directions. They're so long. And then we'll actually head into the module and just check it out, looking at the task and the student work. So let me just point out, we'll follow steps 1 through 4 in order to look at the prompt and the focus standards. And then we'll head in and look at the rest of the steps to look at the student work. So steps 1 through 4 ask you to open up the module, which we'll do in just a moment, Read the task closely, and then think about these questions as you read. So the usual questions. What's the task asking the kids to think about? And then where do you see the language of the focus standards in the task? Then we're going to look at the standards themselves, especially the reading standard. And again, just see if can we see evidence of that reading standard in the task. So let me open up the module on my screen. Again, we're looking at the comparing firsthand and secondhand accounts. So it's a 4th grade social studies module. I'll pull that up on my screen. You can do the same on yours. If it's more comfortable for you, you can completely look on my screen if it's big enough for you to see. If you don't want to, move my screen behind your own and look on your own. Okay, so let's just kind of apply steps 2 through 4, as it were, here. I'll read the prompt out loud, and then you can just check it out on your screen, read it to yourself, and we'll think together. Let's have a quick verbal chat about what we think the task is asking the kids to do. Then we'll look at if we see the language of the standards in the prompt. So here's the prompt again, 4th grade social studies. After reading a letter from Colonel Henry Shackelford and a secondhand account of the Battle of LAUSD, write an essay in which you compare how each type of source contributes to an understanding of the significance of this historical event. Support your response with evidence from the text. Explain how the primary source and the secondary source are different in focus. So really quickly, before we even get into the standards, write in the chat or just share verbally, what is this task asking the kids to do with these texts? What is this task asking students to do and to think about?
It's asking them to compare.
Yeah, compare what?
Each type of source.
Yeah, and in particular, compare how each type of source conveys the significance of a specific battle, right? I'll go like one layer deeper. Tonette just mentioned it in the chat, is to compare firsthand to secondhand to get a better sense of how those two things might actually develop a different kind of meaning or impart a different type of significance to an event. So, I shouldn't have showed you the standards first. I should have asked you just which you would choose. Because I often think when you're looking at primary and secondary sources, it's really nice to, especially in this case, when you want kids to compare between the two, something that immediately popped up into my brain is, it might be good to have them think about point of view when they're doing this kind of work. And you can see, let's take a look at the standards here. They have indeed selected reading standard 6, which is the point of view reading standard. For 4th grade kids and for informational texts, this standard, it really wants the kids to work on comparing and contrasting firsthand and secondhand accounts of the same event or topic, and then describing the differences in focus and in the information provided. So it's a good, clear standard, nice guidance. Compare and contrast those two accounts, and then describe how their focuses are different and how the information they provide is different. We'll just review the other 2 focus standards that this teacher decided on. She's working toward writing standard 2, having the kids write an informational text, or product rather. And then her content standard, she's from Florida, so the social studies standard for 4th grade for these guys is analyze primary and secondary sources to identify significant individuals and events throughout Florida history. So here's what let's finish up our instructions here and really look at where we see the language of the reading standard, in particular in the prompt. And again, chat verbally or share in the Zoom chat where you see the language of reading standard 6 in the task. I'm gonna give you a moment to look. Oops, sorry about that. Where do you see R6 in the task itself? I'll give a minute here. So throw in the chat or share verbally. Oh, hi, Charles. I didn't realize owner PC was you. Good to have you here. So I see a few options are in the chat. Let me give half a minute more and just write, where specifically do you see the language of R6, reading standard 6, in the task? And then we'll just chat as a group about it.
Hi, I'm a little confused. So
Yep.
you're saying the language, literally where the language of the standard is in the prompt?
Yeah.
So I see that, they don't refer to the firsthand account, but they say letter, which is a primary source.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say the second. So they have the two different ones. So I'm assuming, this is the kids would know this is the primary and this is the secondary.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what
I'm assuming that too. Yeah, you're getting there. I mean, first we're looking at the actual language of the standard. Of course, sometimes people change the language they use, so you might just be looking for overall alignment. Like, oh, is this teacher actually asking the kids to do the work of reading standard 6, of comparing these two accounts?
I mean, I would say yes, because I recognize that there's two different sources there.
Yeah. And that's really, I think, what the majority of folks in the chat are saying too. Like, the big place most people are seeing the reading standard work being asked for in the prompt is when they're asked to compare between the two sources. The reading standard, what I want to mention is it really nicely kind of amplifies or provides guidance, I'll say, for the kids to actually do the work of the content standard, which is analyzing these sources to identify significant individuals and events. So the teacher did a really nice job of using both standards to write her prompt. So she asked the kids to compare how each type of source contributes to an understanding of the significance of the event. So really, I can actually see both the reading standard and the content standard in that part of the prompt. One other part I saw a few folks mention in the chat is this teacher added an additional demand at the end of the prompt, asking the kids to look at how the primary and secondary source are different in their focus, which comes straight from the reading standard too. So overall, nice alignment. Let's say, this was your 4th grade colleague and they had asked you to leave them a little bit of feedback on the task. Would you feel good saying, yeah, I can definitely see that your task is asking the kids to do the work of your focus standards? Yeah, good nods. Yeah, me too. I think totally on the right path. Hey, if we were really in a coaching capacity, I might get into a little bit of the language used in this part of the prompt, comparing how each type of source contributes to an understanding of the significance of the event. I think that's a little bit confusing wording, especially for little ones. But on the whole, I think this task does really nicely guide the kids to focus in on the practicing the skills and learning the content in these focus standards. So that known, let's just spend a few minutes here and then we'll close up about 6 minutes to check out the student work. So what I'm going to do is, one moment, scroll down. We've got the rest of our instructions here on the side of the screen. What we're going to do is scroll down to the student paper. And I would like you to click on the top link. It says 4th Social Studies Student Work Sample. Should open up as a Word doc on your screen. Let me pull it up on mine too. Can you see the document on my screen? Okay. So you can see the focus standards and the task are at the top of the document. You've got your prompt, got those 3 standards we mentioned: content, reading, writing. Right now, again, we'll just take about 5 minutes. So quick activity, just kind of get our brains going around looking for the evidence of the standards in the kids' work. I'd like you to move through, probably get to, maybe 2, maybe 3 paragraphs, and try to highlight where you see the reading standard and the content standard in particular. Those are the 2 really that are the big ones to look for. So if you're seeing that the student is doing that reading standard work, comparing and contrasting those 2 accounts, describing their differences in focus, you can highlight that in yellow. And again, the highlighting, if you are in Word as well, is this little button up on it says text highlight color if you keep your mouse on it. I always just go up there and click yellow just to get to my highlighting tool. Same with the content standard, which here, really in particular, it's if the student is actually describing Florida's involvement or this particular battle in the Civil War. So go ahead and I'll put 5 minutes on the clock just for you to start doing some of this work. In particular, looking at if the student's really showing that they are showing the skills, and the content in the reading standard 6, as well as the content standard. Any questions about this highlighting activity?
You mentioned, where do I find the document?
Yeah. Let me go ahead and get back to the module. So scroll let me go up to the top. See how I'm in the module comparing firsthand and secondhand accounts?
Yes.
Scroll all the way down to the bottom of it in the what results section.
Okay, what results? Okay.
And then click that top link. That's just the one that we're going to practice with today.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so let me put 5 minutes on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you get your own screen back. And yeah, just aim for maybe 2, maybe 3 paragraphs, and then we'll discuss if we saw evidence.